Welcome to episode 3, season 2 of It Girls. Today we have a super special guest joining us. We have the one, the only Jen Spicher. Jen Spicher is the CEO of the new Pro Volleyball Federation, but she also brings a wealth of knowledge and experience from her past roles as sales executives at multiple different places. Get ready for amazing insights on business leadership, the trajectory of volleyball in America, and how Kim has been able to weave her love for volleyball and business in her current role. Please welcome Miss Jen Spicher to the show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the It Girls podcast. And as many of you guys know, I have started my professional volleyball journey here in the United States, and I'm so excited that that's an opportunity for me, but it would not have been without our special guest today, Miss Jen Spicher. Jen is the CEO of the Professional Volleyball Federation, and we are so thankful to have her. Jen, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and I'm even better after watching you guys play last night. That was a fantastic match.
Oh, man.
I do say it didn't quite come out on the Orlando Valks end, but you know what? You guys made it super exciting, and it was a blast to watch.
Yeah. Yesterday, Jen, I called Z, and so proud of her. It was such a great game for fans. We were loving it, and she answered, and she said, "You can ask me anything. It cannot be about volleyball." Which isn't fair. I'm like, I had so many volleyball questions to ask, so we couldn't talk about volleyball. So hopefully, maybe today she'll let me bring up the game.
I'm feeling a little bit better today, just a little bit.
So you guys played really, really well. You were very scrappy. That team is coming together, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see you in the championship in May.
Oh, I hope so, Jen.
That would be awesome. I was talking to one of our other really good friends, Allie, somewhere on Atlanta. And, the thing, when we can get to the league later, but one thing I do want to mention is the parity across the league is unbelievable. I don't know if I was naive. I did not expect that at all. I thought there would be some teams that were far and away, and that is not the case.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, Maddie, because, I pay attention to social media, right? Whenever you're in a new league, you want to hear what people are saying. And I tell you what, our league, the CEO, myself, the founders, we really took it like literally on the chin when we signed Vegas and when we signed San Diego, and people were like, there's no way these teams are going to be any good. There's no players left. And look at our stars. Our stars are NCAA graduates: Jill Gillen, Azhani Tealer, Hannah Maddox. I mean, who even knew about Hannah Maddox?
Right.
She jumps out of the sky. I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you, Z, Amy Polly told me about a month ago that you are going to be, in the future, one of the best opposites, if not the best opposite, in this league.
She loves saying that. She really does love saying that. We'll see. We'll see.
Well, my question to you is, are you having any fun?
Oh my gosh, this is the best job in the world. I was like thinking,
Maddie, my job is the best job in the world.
That's true. Yeah, no, you got the best job in the world. But this, Maddie called me, and I was like, what if I called Maddie and only wanted to talk about work? But I'm like, this is fun work. Like, my job is to play volleyball, and it's the best. So it's awesome.
Awesome.
Oh, I love it. Well, like I said, we'll get back to league talk later. But Jen, first and foremost, we always love to kind of set the stage for our guests. A lot of guests know what you do, but they don't know who you are. And the whole point of It Girls and why we do what we do is we want to tell the story more than just what people do or what sport they play. So tell us about Jen Spicher. Tell us about where you grew up. Tell us about your parents, your family. How did it kind of shape you into the person you are today?
Born and raised on a farm in the middle of Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor, Michigan. I spent my summers showing steers at the 4-H fair. I spent my summers riding horses. I know how to make a steer's tail into a perfect ball so that it shows him off and you can get money for selling steers at the 4-H fair auction. How I paid for my first car in cash when I was 16. And that work ethic of being raised on a farm. I mean, I had to get up at 5:36 a.m. every day and take care of the 25 horses that we had. And my brother, he has the responsibility of the cows, and he had to feed the 80 cows that we had. And then we would go to school, and then we would come home, and obviously on the weekends there was stalls to clean out and other chores to do. But that work ethic has bled into and over throughout my career. I played volleyball in college. One of the things that I wanted out of my high school career was to get a full ride volleyball scholarship, and I did that. And I went from Ann Arbor, Michigan, right, home of U of M, to downtown Detroit, farm girl to living downtown Detroit, playing for Wayne State University. And that was a whole culture shock and learning curve all by itself. Probably the best 4 years of my life until I had kids, and had a blast in college, and played volleyball. And part of my getting myself through school is I had a job as the executive assistant in the football office. My dad played professional football, and I loved the game, and I knew the game, and so literally like the first week I was there, I applied and I got the job. And it was there that I met our founder, Dave Winham. Dave was the defensive coordinator at Wayne State University my senior year of college. And he literally called me 25 years later and offered me this opportunity.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
That was one of like the main questions we had, is how did this kind of opportunity come to fruition, which we'll get into more of that later. But I had to mention, I showed swine and dairy at the fair for,
there you go.
For whatever, 12 years. So Z knew as soon as you said that I was going to light up.
There's always something so unique about Maddie that one of the guests happens to have in common, and it's just this bond that they create. And I'm just sitting here like, I don't know anything about cows.
Shut up, but woe is me. Woe is me. I love it.
Okay, well, Jen, talk about your kids a little bit. I saw you have that best mom mug, so they must really love you.
Mug.
How are your kids into volleyball? How do they feel about this opportunity and all of that?
Yeah, so my husband Daryl and I have been together for 29 years, married for 25 this year. We have a son, Brock, who's 21, and a daughter, Bryn, who is 20. Both are in college. Brock is finishing his senior year. He's fifth year. He's at Kettering University, which is the old GMI. It's a specific engineering school, and he's a mechanical engineer, and he's finishing his fifth and final year. They have to get 168 credits up there, and they have to write a thesis.
Boy.
So it's almost like he's got a master's in engineering because he's got so much schooling in. And then she's studying to be she's pre-vet at the University of Findlay, which is just about an hour and a half south of Detroit, which is where we call home. We live in Grosse Pointe Woods. And so I've got one an hour north of us on 75 and one an hour and a half south. So they're both kind of close. My daughter played volleyball, and I ended up coaching her last 6 or 7 years. When you pay $3,500 for a club season, and the coach has never coached high school, and they're teaching the setter to stand behind the block and not play perimeter or rotational defense, it's time to step in. So I coached her from her 8th grade year through her senior year, and she was a great kid, is a great kid, loved the game. And then when I got this phone call, I mean, it was just my entire life, and all my worlds were colliding, because I was 30-year career in the human capital staffing business, mentoring women in business, my volleyball life, my volleyball coaching life. My kids were literally empty. I was an empty nester when I got the phone call. So I was like, I'm going to be so bored. So I ended up taking this job, and obviously it's been a great fit for me. My family is so supportive. My daughter is so excited because of her schoolwork. She actually hasn't made it to a match yet. She's coming home this weekend, and she and I are going to drive over to Grand Rapids and be at the noon match in Grand Rapids on Saturday. And she's super pumped about it. My son, between you and me, he ended up coming down to Tampa and watching the NCAA finals, and he had never seen anything, right? And we had a suite, and we had a bunch of owners in there and a bunch of sponsors in there, and he looked at me after it was all done, and he just looked at me and goes, and you're the head of all of this? And I go, yeah. And he's like, wow, Mom. Like, he just didn't, he just couldn't fathom it. And so they're all very proud of me, and I'm obviously extremely proud of all of them.
That's
what
awesome.
A cool moment. What a cool moment. I mean, just to have it come full circle the way it has, and then for your kids to get to witness that at an age where they can actually comprehend the magnitude of what is happening is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Jen, going back to something you touched on, so I'm in business, I'm in finance. And so of course, like, I went right to your LinkedIn, like I said, and was like, what did this woman do before this? Got to know. So tell us about your your career in talent acquisition, recruiting, consulting a little bit.
Right.
You know, it can kind of be all lumped together in some form or another. So tell us about that, and how it's gotten you to where you're at now.
Well, when I graduated from college, I wanted to get into sales. Everybody told me that I had the personality to be in sales. And so I applied for a job, and I was told I was going to be in sales. And within 3 hours, I was answering the director of sales phone and became one of the best executive assistants you've ever seen. So much so that nobody would give me a sales role because nobody wanted me to not be their executive assistant. And so one day, one of my mentors, his name is Jack Van Team, who his wife was my maid of honor in our wedding. One of my mentors came up to me and said, "Hey, I want you to come and be with me and be a recruiter." And I said, "Okay, in what?" He goes, "IT." And I said, "How do you spell that?" Because I knew nothing about IT, nothing. And it was the point of changing my career. I went from making like $12.50 to making, 6-figure salaries. It was pre Y2K, which is for you guys, it was pre 2000 when everybody thought the world was going to shut down because nobody had, turned the century before in a computer. And I started in 1995 and, did really, really well in recruiting and, learned how to, sell to, people that needed jobs. And, it was a great opportunity for me. I did that for about 5 years, was the number one recruiter in the company for a number of years, then became the director of recruiting, and I had 60 recruiters across the globe. And then each time I made a change in my career, I was running to something, not away from something. And I wanted to make sure that was what I was doing. And so when I left MSX International and went to Kforce, one of the things that I wanted to get was experience running my own profit loss P&L, right? As a recruiting director, you didn't have your own P&L. It was sitting at the division level. And so I needed that experience. And then when I left there and went to Bartech, I started 2 divisions, right? So I built a team from nothing, people, process, technology. So I did that. And then when I left there, I went and ended up at Kelly for 8 years. That's where, I learned how to really hone my sales ability. And I basically went on the road. My husband and I made a decision. He owned a fine wine liquor store here in Grosse Pointe, and our kids were 3 and 4, and we had blown through 3 nannies in 4 years. And I just said, this isn't, what I want to do. I don't want to raise our children this way. And, my career was hockey sticking, and his was, he was really sick and tired of the beverage business. And I said, why don't you stay home and be a stay-at-home dad? And he was like, I am in. And that's what he did. And he raised our children. And we have fantastic kids that are both extremely smart. We have no idea where that came from because it certainly didn't come from either one of us. And then that's when I started traveling the world and was selling globally for Kelly and sold these very large contingent labor programs, and really, honed my negotiation skills and left Kelly about eight years into Kelly Services, and then started built a sales company, a sales culture for a new company called Talent Wave. Was there for about 4 years, and then Level Up called, and they wanted me to build their sales team. Literally, they had 1 person. And when I left Level Up, we had 14 people in sales and marketing, and we were obviously tripled the number we'd done the year before. So that's kind of my forte, is building. And if you can imagine, when I got the phone call to be the CEO, and it needed to be built. And so that's why I'm here. And, my main focus, all of my first year, which was, basically June of 22 to June of 23, was convincing the top 400 or 500 women that were playing in Europe to come and join this league. And, we ended up having 140 people sign contracts and show up to training camp. 30 of our 35 drafted players, including Azhani, were signed to contracts and are now playing in our league. So it's really taken off.
So first off, like, what a testament to your husband, because I don't know how many guys would do that, or your husband must be a really awesome guy to say, I'm going to stay at home and let you go do what you want to do. And so that's awesome. But
he's an amazing individual to put up with me every day, for sure.
I'm sure he would say the same about you.
Yeah. But hearing you kind of build and do all these things with Kelly and all these other level up, and how does that directly translate to what you're doing now, and how does that help with how you've built PVF?
Well, we're building a team, right? We're building culture. We're building a sales engine. We're building, sponsorship partners. I mean, it's all about relationships, and it's all about relationships with the players too. Right now, one of my roles is I call it Chief Complaint Department, CCO, because I'm getting phone calls from players with great things to say, and I'm getting phone calls from players with tweaks to say, right? And it's all about, having the patience to, make sure that these athletes are treated the way that I promised them that we're going to treat them. And that's with, the utmost professionalism, the utmost care, making sure that they feel on a day in and day out that they are being cared for and treated with the utmost professionalism. And that's my job, to ensure that our team and all of the teams make sure that happens every day.
Yeah. And real quick, before I know Maddie has a question, I have to tell the story. Our first home game in Orlando, Jen Spicher was there. We were playing Atlanta. Atmosphere was awesome. And I hear this woman walk behind me, and she's like, to me and one of my other teammates, Kalia and Azhani, she calls us by name, and she's like, congratulations to you guys. Like, this is so awesome. And immediately me and Kalia, as soon as you left, both look at each other and we're like, how awesome that this woman is running a business with however many people. You have all of these players and you know us two by name, and it's the first game. We're like, there's people in our organization that don't even know our names yet. And this woman does. And so we really at that moment knew how much you cared and thought that was so awesome, and really thankful to be led by you. And so we know now, like, this is the real deal. This woman's the real deal. And so I had to tell that story.
I know every single player's name. I know every single player's height. I know every single player's school. I don't know all the teams that they played for professionally, but I know where they've been and I know where they're coming from. And it's my passion, and we're doing it for all of you. 100%.
Yeah. That is so cool.
Thank you for that story, Z. I appreciate that.
That is really cool. I just read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's from like 100 years ago. And that's one whole chapter is about the importance of the name. And when people say your name, like, you have so much identity around that. And I know Z's name is more difficult to pronounce than others. And so she really does. I do, Z. I know you love when people actually call you Azhani, because it shows that they
so
care.
Pretty. It's such a beautiful name.
Thank you.
It's so pretty. Yeah.
I always hope I'm not going to screw it up, Azhani.
No, it's perfect. It's great.
There you go.
I love it. I love it. So Jen, I do have a question. It's funny. I have similar career goals, and I don't know. I have no idea how it's going to pan out, but I want to build something. I'm so passionate about getting from 0 to 100, right? But I wonder, in your career before PVF, did you ever feel like you had quote unquote made it? Like, you were like, I am in my groove. This is where I want to be. I know now that's probably kind of how you feel, but before that, was there ever a time where you felt like you were in the spot where you're supposed to be?
I felt like that my whole career. I've been very, very blessed to have made some, and I have lots of mentors, lots of women and men that I've leaned on over the course of my career, that have helped me make decisions. And like I said, Maddie, every time I made a move, I was moving towards something and not away from something else. And I was getting another notch in my belt, if you will, of experience that I didn't have, or broadening some, exposing myself to some experience that I didn't have yet. And I think that's obviously what's led me to this. I mean, one of the things when Dave called me, and I hadn't heard from him in 22 years. I mean, I was in the middle of training 30 global salespeople in Atlantic City, New Jersey. It was a Wednesday afternoon. It was about 1:30. We had just broke for lunch and we were coming back. And it literally, your iPhone, it said, might be Dave Winham. I didn't even have his phone number. Right. And I sent a note and I said, if this is Dave Winham, because, for me, it's all about relationships and keeping connections. Right. And so the fact that he reached out, I was a little concerned that something bad had happened after 22 years. So I just said, if this is Dave Winham, I'm in the middle of training salespeople. I'll call you as soon as we have a break. And he responded with, thumbs up. And I did. And I was sitting in the lobby and he told me, he said, in 6 months, he actually called it AVA. It was the American Volleyball Association at the time. And then we realized if we left it with AVA, we were going to pretty much piss off about 200 club teams. So we decided to change the name.
That's so true.
That's a good call.
Alaska Volleyball Association, Alabama, Ann Arbor. I mean, just all of them. Anyways,
That's so funny.
And he shared with me, his vision and his, timeline. And I basically said, why me? And he said, why not? He said, look what you've done with your career. You've built sales and marketing teams. You've built culture. You've built and you've sold globally. You've negotiated globally. That's what this is. And he goes, and your last name is Spicher.
That's crazy, Jen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The story's amazing. But I told Z before, I always find it so ironic how people's last names can correlate with what they do. And she's like, what do you mean? I'm like, her last name's Spicher.
There's a word for that. And I can't think of it. Nominative determination or something like that. Anyways, I have to look it up.
Okay. Wow.
There is a word for that.
Wow. That is such a good story. I really can't get over the fact that you didn't talk to this man in 22 years and then he just shoots you a call. And I would be the same way. I'd be like, why is this man calling me? I haven't talked to him in, a quarter of a decade or quarter of a century.
Well, and you can imagine I had to do some convincing with my husband because, I'm 30 years into a career. I'm the chief revenue officer of a global staffing company, and I'm going to leave that and all my history in that business to go to a startup. And my husband, he's a stay-at-home dad. I mean, he makes his, a little bit of money on the side for himself. He keeps our toys going. We've got 4-wheelers and snowmobiles and he takes care of all that stuff. But, I'm the primary breadwinner. And if it doesn't go well, that's not going to be good for us.
Yeah, certainly. Z, I have one question and then I'll hand it off. But, so one thing that I do want to understand and how, in terms of like PVF as a whole, how is it funded? Did you guys do like traditional venture capital or did you guys go more like through debt or was it just people, explain it the best that you can.
It's just like the NFL. It's owner funded. So each team that gets purchased gets awarded is bought by an ownership group or an owner. Sometimes they have, partners like in the terms of Danny White and City Ventures, who owns Omaha, and Jason Derulo. Sometimes they just, Mr. DeVos and the DP Fox team own Grand Rapids. So it's funded and by the owners. And so there's a certain amount of money that they pay for a team called a franchise fee. And then there's a certain amount of operating budget that they need, but not, completely different than some of the competitors out there like Love, where they're venture capitalist or private equity owned. The other difference is the league doesn't own any of the teams, right? They're self-funded in each market. The league owns the league, and we own all of the creative marks and the marketing, and we set the policies and the processes and the procedures, and we make sure that Azhani is staying in a 4-star hotel where she goes, and she's traveling by air if it's greater than 250 miles from city to city, and making sure those things are happening. But at the team level, the team are selling tickets and they're getting their revenue from those. They're selling sponsorship, they're getting revenue from those. And so very much like the NFL or the WNBA, each of the teams is owned by a specific group of people.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot more sense. Cool.
Well, and that's, as you know, that's the model that works. That's the economic model that works. We've all seen a couple times where volleyball has been tried in the United States of America. And the reason it didn't go was one person or entity owned all the teams. That is not a model for success. And, it's one of the reasons that we're very staunch on PVF being the premier women's sports league, professional sports league in North America in the very near future, if not already.
I love it. That's awesome. I totally agree. I think we met Z's owner. I met him briefly when I was in Orlando, and he seems like a really great guy. And
he's a
also
great
just
guy.
as passionate about growing the league.
Yep. I was going to say, it's like really interesting. I think about other commissioners, Roger Goodell and Adam Silver, owners, and you don't know anything about Adam Silver. He's a commissioner, and same about Roger Goodell. But I feel like we know you. And even when we go to Omaha, we went to Atlanta, like their owners are introducing themselves to us. And it's really awesome. Like you can tell everyone's so excited about this and so passionate about it. And so it's been really exciting. I know Maddie's passionate. And so I was like, hey, David, our owner, this is Maddie. Like you should get to know her. And it's been really cool to be around such successful people such as yourself.
I appreciate that. And I'm so glad you guys had me on.
Yeah. going off that, I'm curious. So when David called, or Mr. Wyndham called you, what was after that phone call your first step? Like, what do we need to figure out right now? What is the move we need to make right now to make this thing go?
We had to convince my husband.
I figured that's what you'd say.
And so Dave Wyndham has a friend that lives in Michigan that is a very close friend of his, and he has a house on a lake. And we literally went out one Sunday afternoon and, had a Sunday afternoon meal and, had a couple of pops, and the boys had a couple of cigars and a couple of maybe one too many cigars. And by the end of that night, my husband was convinced. So,
Oh, it takes.
well, I think that he saw my passion, right? I mean, obviously, who gets that phone call? That's a once in a life phone call. And then I have to tell you, telling my Level Up owner that I was leaving was not an easy conversation either. But he was a little bit like really mad at me, like, basically the WTF, what's going on? And then when he really processed it, like literally like a minute and a half later, and he processed what I was leaving to go do, he very quickly got to the other side of that conversation, which was, oh my God, who gets that phone call? Like, this is a chance of a lifetime. And so then he softened and became very, very accepting of my decision. So, but that's immediately what happened. And then we kind of eased into it. I continued to do my day job at Level Up and continued to work, with Dave and Steven alongside until it was time for me to leave Level Up, and they were able to bring me on full time, which was probably another, 3 months. And then they brought me in full time, and then, you start people, process, and technology. You start it all over again. Unfortunately, we aren't to the tech part yet. We're still managing waiver wires and things like that with Excel spreadsheets, but we're going to very quickly get to that in year 2, I think. There's some technology out there that we're going to be able to hopefully go get and help us with our day jobs. But yeah, that's basically how it happened. You formulate the teams, you take phone calls from, once this went live, Azhani and Maddie, once this went live, I could have sold 15 teams by now. Right? I was on a call this morning.
Owners want to own a franchise.
I was on a call this morning with an ownership group that owns a team in Turkey. And they want to own a team in the United States, and they want to put them in Chicago. Right?
I'm for that.
The amount of people that are interested in this product is, and so now that we're a league, we've formed a board, and that board now has committees. And one of the committees is the finance committee, and another one is the expansion committee. And so any teams that want to be expansion teams now have to go through that process.
That is so cool. Jen, I told my dad and I, we were on a walk a couple weeks ago, and if you look at the growth of volleyball, it is you can't find a product on the market, an investment in the market that has that kind of growth trajectory. You know what I mean? And if you have the money to invest in a franchise, in a team, I told my dad and I were like, God, we wish we had money, because it would just be a jackpot. Oh, it's cool to see what's going to happen. But so tell us about the founders. So first of all, who are they? And are they technically like chairman? Are those like your bosses, or is it, how does that relationship work?
Actually, the founders are now no longer part of the league. They built it, and then they turned over the ownership and the operating of the league to the board.
Cool.
And on the board as you can imagine, are a number of owners. And so I actually report to the board. And that's how the league is being run.
Awesome. Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Z, did you have something about the
No, I
league?
thought you had another one. Jen,
no, that was my last.
I just am curious, and I guess with this, we can kind of start getting into those questions that I was talking about earlier that people have surrounding the league. You were talking about technology, and I think one big question is surrounding surrounding streaming, and YouTube seems to be doing pretty well right now. But at first it was Bally Sports and Stadium and YouTube. How do you guys see that growing over the next however many years?
Yeah, so originally it was Stadium and Bally's, and that got hooked up in legal, and it's still hooked up in legal, which is why we're on YouTube now. And quite frankly, it's funny that, people were kind of bashing us, oh, YouTube, but it's free. And the second we pull it off YouTube, guess what? They're not going to be happy because they have to buy a streaming service, right?
Mhm.
So you're never going to please all the people all the time. We do have our last 10 matches, we do have 10 matches starting on in early April on CBS Sports, including our championship. So that's going to be terrific. As you can imagine, we've talked to a couple of networks, and we were a little bit late, if you can, with naming Vegas, and therefore, some of the networks couldn't handle our season as quickly as it was coming. I think that now the product, the proof is in the pudding, if you will, and the product is so amazing that we'll get a TV deal for next year for sure. But I think YouTube is doing a great job. I'm sure you're aware that each of our owners agreed, and this was not a budgetary item, to buy the Bolt 6 system and Volley Station, and that has been a game changer.
Absolutely.
Watching it on YouTube and seeing those balls in or out by this much, and not having to have line judges. I mean, Azhani, I've seen you hit. If I was standing on that line and knew it was going to happen, I still couldn't pick it up. I'm not that fast. You guys are so strong and you're so powerful that there's no way a line judge is going to pick that up. So that Bolt 6 system, which, by the way, every single owner, they dropped almost $200,000 for that.
Yeah.
And it's so worth it because those in and out calls, they're never wrong. And those block touches, seeing it at that level, there's 22 cameras around the ring or the court. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't. I thought there was only the 6 or 7 that I can see. Those
There's
cameras
more up
are,
top.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense now that talking and thinking. I'm like, surely those cameras are not going to pick up my pinky moving half a centimeter to the right, and it's like this green box block touch, and I'm like, God, what the?
Just call it. Be honest. I was a middle blocker. I'm never going to call it, right? You and I were middles. We're the best liars in the world.
Call it the greatest, yeah. There was one ball against Grand Rapids. One of our players hit and it got blocked, and everyone's like, "Ow, ow!" And the camera, the bolt sticks goes on the screen, and like I can't even explain to you how small this sliver was on the line. Like the whole stadium's like booing, and we're like, "Guys, the call is right." Like that ball is technically in, and it sucks, but to have that kind of technology has been incredible, and I think NCAA volleyball fans at least are realizing like, "Hey, this is a real deal. Like we need this."
It's hard to watch an NCAA match now that you've seen, like last year I went to the VNL and I watched obviously the Olympic qualifiers, and I love volleyball, so I'm always watching it, right? But my husband and I, first thing we'll say, is there a volleyball match on, as opposed to football or anything else? And going back and trying to watch NCAA, as much as I will do it, it's hard because I think it was the Purdue Minnesota match where the first set there was like a 13-minute challenge.
Yeah.
And in a league where you're trying to convert the unconverted, people that just pop onto YouTube or pop onto CBS and, oh, what's this? That's how you're going to get your fans. That's how we're going to make this grow, is once we get onto a network and somebody just happens to be channel surfing. And then, as you know, Azhani, they don't want to leave their seats because they're going to miss something.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Morgan Hens said it best. In volleyball, something cool happens every single point.
100%. 100%. I can speak from a viewership standpoint, Jen, but YouTube is so accessible. Like my mom and dad can pop it on and without having to call me, and like you said, the Bolt 6 technology, it's pretty neat. It's unlike anything I've ever seen. So I know yesterday, not to continue bringing it up, but the last point of the Valks game, they wanted to challenge it because it was like, that was so close, but you couldn't challenge it because it was in. And so it does make the game very clear. You can't have any, hard feelings about a call or anything. So I think it's been done really well.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Of course.
Challenging a touch, by the way. It wasn't challenging in or out.
Oh, okay. Well, the announcers were like, well, they can't challenge in or out, and so they just kind of assumed. But
no, so the refs have this screen in front of them that automatically tells them in or out. And I make this block move, really poor one. Megan Courtney Lush hits it, and we're all like screaming out. but they're like calling for a touch, and we're like, no, we didn't touch it. And then the ref is looking, she's like, no, game's over. And we're like, no, we didn't touch it. And she's like, no, the ball was in. And we're
Tough.
from then on
That's
out.
fair.
Yeah. So
just so
but
you
the
guys
technology
know,
is
any
awesome.
touches like that, go to our headquarters in Frisco, Texas.
Yeah.
And they do the replay, and then they bring it back and they show it on the screen and they show it to the ref. So it's really pretty sophisticated.
Yeah,
Wow.
certainly.
That's incredible.
Jen, I was going to ask you too. So you're in Michigan though. So that's where you stay, but you just travel when you need to, I'm sure.
Yep. So I'm in Grosse Pointe Woods. We live here. We have for, 25, forever. Since I got out of college, I've been on the east side of Detroit. And, been lucky to work for some of the largest companies in Michigan. And then when I, took, different roles, it was, a situation where, they allowed me to work in Detroit, but I worked like Talent Wave was headquartered in Denver. And so I would go to Denver every other week. And Level Up was headquartered in New York. And, because I was in a global sales role, I was traveling for work anyways. It didn't necessarily need to be in New York. And so, I've traveled all my life and traveling now. So I've got a whole list of cities that I'm going to be in, including Orlando in the near future to see these matches.
That's awesome. That's cool. Okay, Jen, one more question, then you can get to the very league specific questions. Where do you see PVF going in the next, say, 2 years? What's the 2-year trajectory? And then where do you think the 10-year trajectory is?
So I think, in 2025, we'll probably stick with the 10 that we have. We've already announced Indianapolis, Kansas City, and Dallas. In order for a team to be in our league in 2025, they really need to have their front office and their head coach kind of hired by April 30th. And we're already sitting at March 4th. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that 2025 will have 10. That'll create, again, parity in the league. Azhani knows this. Every one of our players has signed a 1-year contract. And we did that in the hopes that, a loaded team, like Atlanta, they might be dispersing some of that talent to places that are closer to home. Maybe Allie Linehan wants to play in Indiana as opposed to Atlanta. Who knows? Maybe Z wants to go back to and play closer to Kentucky. There's plenty of Indiana liberos out there that were born and raised in the Munciana system, and Indianapolis has a team next year. And there's plenty of women that want to play in Dallas or Kansas City. And so, everybody's going to be allowed to kind of regroup, reset. And if they want to be in Orlando, then they'll get to resign. And if they want to be somewhere else, then they'll be able to do that. So we see it with 2025 being 10. I could easily see us getting to 14 and 26, if not 16. It's really just a matter of what's too many and too much. We're still talking to some of the top players that are in Europe. But, we believe that this league is going to be built on the stars that are coming out of the NCAA. And you're looking at one of them right there in the blue hat, right? And the class of 2025 coming up, and they're loaded with COVID years and 5th year, 6th year seniors. And now that they've seen our product and they don't, maybe don't want to go to Europe, although some do. I'll be very honest. There was some women that were drafted or not drafted because we were told that they were going to Europe and that was it. They wanted that experience. And, a couple of them I know for a fact are very unhappy in Europe. And that's what happens to a lot of women that go over there and play, is they think it's all this and then it becomes nothing like they thought it was going to be. And so, 2026, I could see us hitting 14, maybe 16 in 10 years, 24. 28.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
That's
that.
crazy.
Jen, you all have picked unbelievable locations. I know that you tell non-volleyball people the places and they're like Omaha, like, Columbus, but volleyball people know that those are brilliant locations. Those are hotbeds for volleyball.
Yeah.
So I am so pumped to see where it's going to go. And then on the Europe piece, Z and I have some of our best friends who tried the Europe thing. And, Avery Skinner, for example, she's an example of someone who really does love it over there and who's thrived in.
She does love it. I talked to her. She absolutely loves it.
We'll keep trying to convince her, Jen, but for right now, she does love it. But then you have people like Madison Lilly and Allie Stumler who who didn't have that same experience. So to be able to play on their home turf, have family come watch every weekend, such a blessing. I'm so excited to see.
Any poll that you two have with Madison Lily, let me know. I've tried to get her to play in us. She's like, no, I'm going to coach for a while. And I'm like, really? And then I thought maybe once she saw the product, she might change her mind.
It's a tough sell. I don't know. I'll work on it, but we'll see about that one.
I'll find you a referral fee. How's that?
Hey, we can get that written on paper. I'll do my best.
There you go. But no, I've talked to Avery and she loves it in Europe. I think, and that's fine. That's terrific. We're not for everybody. So.
But for a lot, you are for a lot. So I'm pumped. I wish I was good enough. Maybe someday.
I wish I was good enough. I was telling one team, I said, I played middle blocker back when they didn't require a vertical jump. That's how I made middle blocker.
Was that apparently you need one of those nowadays? Oh God. Okay, goodness. Jen, you talked about this league kind of being brought up through NCAA and those women players, and we had the draft this year, and all the teams and all the coaches met in one location, and it was kind of just dropped like, here who we drafted, here's how it went. How do you see the draft process elevating in the next few years, and what can that look like?
Well, I mean, I'd love to put it on TV. We were thinking about putting it on TV this year, but not being our first year, there was a no-win situation there, right? We could only have lost in that scenario. And so, I see, potentially the draft being a little earlier this year. We'd like to, in 2025, we're looking at maybe increasing and putting our training camp starting December 1. Right. We're talking about that right now, is what that 2025 season looks like, to give you guys a little more space, right? Because of the lateness of which we announced the arena for Vegas and getting that arena done, our schedule was a little bit more cramped than we would have liked. Mm-hmm. And we want to give the athletes a little more space. Maybe we play 24 matches, but we do it in 22 weeks instead of 16. That gives you guys some space and some time to recover and to heal. And that's what we're really looking for. But the draft, whether it's 4 rounds or 5 rounds, you're talking about 10 teams. So instead of 35 athletes, you're maybe looking at 50. Maybe it's 4 rounds and we do 40. I love the idea of the practice player role being secured only by an NCAA drafted athlete. That gives you guys that are being drafted a place to go and a place to learn, because the average tenure of our players is they have 5 years of professional playing experience. And when you're coming out of college, that can be daunting, right? To try to step into that. Obviously, Azhani, you've already shown that you can step into that, which is amazing, by making the active roster now, which is fantastic. And many of the NCAA drafted players did. There was I think, like I said, 30 out of 35 that were drafted, signed a contract and showed up to training camp. 2 of them went over to Europe, Kendall Kipp and Skylar Fields. 2 of them didn't play, and 1 of them went to Puerto Rico. And so, it wasn't like everybody that didn't, sign a contract just went to Europe. And, again, our proof is in our product. I mean, these you go watch that last point of that Columbus opener, and you hear, I was there. You hear that crowd. I mean, that's like being in the NCAA championship. It's amazing.
It's so exciting.
That's the atmosphere what we were creating, hopefully on any given night.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a question that just popped in my head. No one's asked this yet, but I'm curious. You look at like NWSL, for instance, they have 18-year-olds on their teams, or the NBA, people are foregoing the rest of their college career. NFL, they can forgo their senior year. That's not the case with the WNBA yet, but do you ever see that being a thing for this league, where we have younger players in the league?
Yeah, so we do have, our draft rule does say that the only rule is you have to be 18 years or older. Mm-hmm. But I think, Azhani, you would agree, and Maddie, you probably would agree too, having played, there are very few coaches that are going to draft somebody that hasn't really been tested at the pass serve game.
Yeah.
And that's what college does. It tests the pass serve game. even somebody as a freshman doesn't have those 3, 4, 5 years of experience of playing at a high collegiate level. And so I don't really see that happening. I believe right now, I literally have to go look at the rules because there's so many. But I believe right now that we allow coaches to have their rights for 2 years, right? And so technically, could a junior be drafted and then that coach potentially have their rights for the next season? Yes. But, at this point, I just don't see that happening very often.
Yeah.
At the level of play that we're playing at, you've got to be tested at the pass serve game.
That's a really good point, Jen. I think even if you had a middle, the blocking is just too fast. If you had a setter, they're just not going to know the game at that speed. But I agree, the serve pass game is probably where you get tested the most. I can attest.
If I was a 17-year-old having Wilma Rivera serve at me, I would ask to be subbed out.
Thank you.
I would sub myself. I would walk to the line.
Take me out.
She does have a hammer, doesn't she?
Man. Yeah. Okay, Jen, one more question. Actually, I have 2 more questions for you. This question I know is something that a lot of people have been looking for in terms of league stats and leaderboards and all of that being accessible. What does that look like in the coming time?
It's on our website, isn't it? Should be.
This is just a question that someone
no, it's
asked
not.
me.
If you go to www.provolleyball.com, stats for every match are on there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
you just go to stats. League transactions are on there.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody wants to know if somebody made, somebody's on the injured reserve list, or somebody got waived, or somebody was claimed, or somebody got moved from practice squad to active roster, it's all there every single day. It gets updated.
Perfect.
So if it wasn't updated, for example, I think the last time it was updated was the 2nd. Yeah, because August Rasky unfortunately had to be put on injured reserve. And so San Diego needed to sign another setter. And so they went and basically signed Kylie Cole.
I did not know that. Nice.
Yep. And she's somebody that tried out for Atlanta, unfortunately got waived, but was sitting in Vegas close to San Diego and was still in the gym, by the way.
Good.
Stay in the gym because you never know what could happen.
Yeah.
And she got picked up. So she's going to be on their roster tonight.
That's a cool
in the
story.
gym and on their bench tonight. And she's pretty excited about it.
That's so cool.
That's really cool. Going off that question, Z, and Z knows, I was really bad at stats in college in terms of volleyball stats. I would love practice, but is there somewhere to find, for example, I know you guys don't use hitting percentage, you use a different statistic to measure attackers, but is there somewhere where you have the top 5 highest attacking percentages somewhere on the website?
Yeah, I think it's on the website too. I'd have to go look at it, but yeah, I believe it's all right there.
That shows,
as you may know,
I'm not good at that, but
we have a lot of awards that are up for grabs for bonus money at the end of the season. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, Maddie, but if the Orlando Valks win the championship, they split $1 million.
I did hear that. That is pretty awesome.
If your girl there on your left gets the opposite player of the year, she makes $7,500.
Wow.
And
so
those awards are going to be not only voted on by coaches, but very statistically driven.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, Jen, when the Valks win and when Azhani wins opposite of the year, she'll be taking me to a couple steakhouses, I think.
You and me both.
Only Jen, not Maddie.
I'll remember that, Tealer.
Jen,
okay, one last question for you. And this is a question from my mom, actually. I thought it was a pretty good question.
Your mom and I had a great conversation.
I do know that. I do know that. She talked very highly of you. She wanted to know.
I couldn't talk to Z because she was in school and I didn't want to ruin her eligibility, but I wanted her in our league. So I got to her mom through Sarah Sarafa, Ava Sarafa's mom.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Small world.
Natasha is 1 in a million. She really is.
She's excited. But she wanted to know, what does success in your eyes look like for year 1? What does success in this league right now look like by May 29th? And have we seen that yet?
Well, my favorite part about this right now is watching you guys compete at the level you're competing and having a great time doing it. So for me, I already feel like we've achieved success. More success would be more sponsors for sure. Getting us on TV for every match next year. We need more sponsors, and I'll be the first to admit that at the end of the day, you can only do so much, right? Like you can't start signing sponsors until you know whether you're going to be on TV or not, because the first thing they ask is what's the league asset? How often am I going to be on TV? How many commercials can I get? Things like that. What's the floor look like? What is the league asset when it comes to the tape? There's all kinds of there's an order to setting up a league, and now we're literally in that order of, okay, let's go out and get a bunch of sponsors, which is what success will look like when we get those signed. But having the parity that we have in this league so far, again, that was something that was a question that we weren't going to know until after the matches were played. And I think that, again, even though I think San Diego's like 1-5, they're super uber competitive in every single set that they're in. They 25, 27, 30. I was at the 36-34 match. That was crazy. So having success there, it's funny because I'm going to share with you guys, one of the networks told me that in order to broadcast us, that we had to get into a 2-hour window. And I said, really? Because hockey's not in a 2-hour window, and the NWSL isn't necessarily in a 2-hour window, and football has an overtime, and so does the NBA, and really?
What? Yeah.
So we're gonna make some changes to the timing of our matches for 2025. That's going to create a little bit quicker. Like we might do away with that 10-minute intermission between 2 and 3. Although one of the reasons we put that in was in case a team was getting blown out 2-0, that intermission, as you know, can create a momentum shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's happened a lot if you go back and look at some of the matches. So those are things that we need to look at and tweak in order to very long-winded answer to your question about what does success look like. But I think all of those things are coming. And I think, when we kick off 2025 and we have 10 teams and we have parity and we are on a network and we have, all of our matches broadcast, whether it's streamed or live TV or whatnot, that'll be success.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I love it.
And happy and healthy athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
They're there right now. I can
coaches.
attest from
Coaches.
hearing from, would you say coaches?
I said, and coaches, happy and healthy coaches.
That's right. All stakeholders. That's awesome. I know I have so many friends in the league and they're all so grateful that this is their full-time job. So even, Gabby Curry, who's in Omaha, and she was a full-on professional working in medical device sales and hadn't played in 2 years and missed the sport and brought it right back. So it's amazing what you're doing, Jen. And I can't shut up about it to people who don't care. So I can only imagine in a world where people do care, how exciting it is.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Look at Sarah Sponsel, beach Olympian. Yeah. She's having the time of her life, and she'd tell you that.
Yeah.
She's
absolutely.
having a blast. So,
Z, do you want to ask our final and best question?
You should ask it.
All right, Jen, I have a feeling you're going to have a really divine answer for this. So we ask all of our guests the same question to end the episode, and that is, what is one piece of advice you would give to all of the winning women listening to this episode?
Wow. Follow your passion. Do what you say you're going to do and follow your passion. The money will come.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been able and blessed in my career to do that. My dad always said, do what you say you're going to do. And I don't know if you remember, but 18 months ago, we said we were going to do this. And I had individual conversations with hundreds of volleyball players. I had Zoom conversations with 10, 15 at a time and told them, this is what it's going to be. This is what we're going to do. This is what it's going to feel like. This is how you're going to be treated. This is how you're going to be traveled. This is how it's going to feel professionally. And I feel like we've done exactly what we said we were going to do. And that's a passion of mine. And I would just tell every woman that, is interested in growing to be passionate about what they do, and the money will come.
I love that. I needed to hear that today. I love that. Jen, thank you. I know on behalf of Z and I, we've been talking about this episode. We couldn't shut up about it. And we're so pumped to just hear your story and hear what you're all about. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on. And Z, good luck with the rest of your season.
Thank
I'll
you
see
so
you
much,
very
Jen.
soon.
Absolutely.